Well, we could introduce it, but I feel like we could keep it organic. I mean, we're talking about The Batman. It came out March 7th. It's a great film. Go watch it.
Or is it? Yes, hi, Brandon here, along with our friend Joyo, and I guess Spoiled Onions is making a soft reboot right now, and we're going to be talking about The Batman. I remember hearing from my, I almost said classmates. What's wrong with me? We were just talking about college. My coworkers, 2 female coworkers, and they were like, "Oh my goodness, it is the best thing that's ever happened. It saved my marriage, and it was better than Spider-Man." And I was like, "Gee golly gosh!" Liam came up to me. He's all like, "Dude, it was the best thing ever." Spoiled half of it. And I was like, "Gee golly gosh, I have to see it tonight." And so I walked through the rain alone at 7:30 p.m. at night. That night, watched the movie alone in the theater, all soaking cold and wet, and I thought it was all right.
Wait, so this is for real? You saw it alone?
I am not kidding. I think it was pretty all right.
No, not that part. The part where you got wet and were sitting alone in the theater?
Oh, I wasn't alone. There were people with me. But I didn't go with anyone. No, I went alone. But there were others next to me. Yes, I went alone because I was like, no, I got to see this movie. Now, somebody's saying it's the best superhero movie? Okay, now I got to go. I'm not waiting. Yeah.
I love that you spoiled it for you. That's awesome.
Well, he only spoiled, like, the really entertaining stuff. Like, he told me about okay, spoiler warning for everybody. He told me about the adrenaline shot, and he told me about the flight suit. And I'm like, wow.
Those are kind of surprises when they happen. So,
right, because I was expecting the whole time when he's going to use that adrenaline thing. So that seconds before he did do the adrenaline thing, I'm like, oh, this is it. This is it. This is when he's going to do it. And then when he did do it, I was like, I knew it. I wasn't shocked. I wasn't anything. I was like, but maybe that's why I think the cars chase scene was maybe like the one where my jaw literally dropped. Mm-hmm. Because when he did the jump over everything, I was just like, oh my gosh! It was all so real. It was enough practical effect for where I was just like, I felt it. I was there with them, and it felt really down to earth, ground level justice, super heroics. That frankly we've been needing in these new superhero movies, because bigger is not necessarily better unless you've earned that bigness, right? And Batman brings us back. We come back, bring it back.
But you still say it's all right. So I'm hearing it's great, it's groundbreaking, but then I'm also hearing it's all right. And all right
my friends think that it's groundbreaking. I mean, don't get me wrong. There's a lot of things that I think are really great. I want a sequel, yes. But I don't think it's the best Batman movie story I've ever heard. I like the Batman himself a lot. Maybe it's my favorite. I'm not sure. But I like that Batman a lot, and I like his detective-like skills. I liked slowing things down, and I like his interaction and dialogue with the officers and his relationships there, right? Bruce Wayne doesn't exist in this movie.
Yes, well, yeah.
And that Joker was nothing to write about. By the way, I don't know if you saw, literally 40 minutes ago, they just released a deleted scene with the Joker and the Batman.
Oh, I did not see
on
that.
YouTube, yes. And I knew you were going to say you didn't see it. I was going to send you a link, but I wanted to wait until we were recording to tell you this so that you can be missing out.
Oh, thank you for that.
Did you need to pause and watch this 5 minutes?
Do you think it will affect the conversation?
No.
Okay, then we're going to watch it afterward.
I'm happy that they didn't, because frankly, I just don't like this version of a Joker. But we're already all over the place. Maybe I should hear what you have to say.
Well, no, I refuse. I want to hear what your issues are, and then I will counter.
Very well. Okay, I'll talk about the real issues. I'll talk about the stuff that actually matters to me. Because I'm going to stay right now, maybe at the end of this conversation, my score will change. But I give it a solid 78. 78. Okay. Now, you're probably thinking, Brandon, you are out of your mind, and I will destroy you. But hear me out, okay? I think that it being a 3-hour movie, it didn't feel like 3 hours, but it did feel like it was stretched, the story. That the story was stretched at times to allow the most breathing when having dialogue and take things very slow, scene by scene. Cinematography-wise, perfect. There are so many times and shots for it. It's like these guys went insane. They planned this out hard to get these kind of shots and all that. But really, at the end of the day, I think if you're focused so much on these riddles, which in the first place, one, Batman solves so many of those things that I would have never guessed in the first place when it comes to some of the riddles. But they're actually a bigger plot point is the fact that he's actually wrong with one of the riddles, and he's being led astray for a decent amount of time between the Penguin, himself, and then it ending up with Falcone. And it's just that whole plot of uncovering riddle seemed so irrelevant beyond the idea of showing that Batman can be a detective, right? It didn't come to the substance of the Riddler's motives, because we could already tell that he was saying that people were corrupt, and we were just unlocking the details of how corrupt they were. But seeing how long that got stretched out, it made me think maybe this would have been better as a show, like a series, like the best series ever, rather than having, you know, a whole movie spend 3 hours of us trying to unlock a mystery that, frankly, we're interpreting incorrectly in the first place. That once we find it out, it's just like, why did this matter? Why did it matter, Riddler, for you to make Batman go back and forth between a Penguin, between himself, and then finally at Falcone, just to decide that, okay, we're going to arrest him, and then you just kill him anyways? It's just, it seems as if all these little details of plot that was executed led to a literal execution of the character in the story, and it makes you think, why would that matter? Why would that possibly matter to the public or the story for us to have to take so long to understand it? It would almost be, if I can give an analogy, as if the Joker said, hello, in The Dark Knight, hello, Batman, in the interrogation scene, and if he was making riddles, it's just like, imagine, no, this is good, this is what's going on. If he's all like, where's Rachel? Joker was all like, oh, I'm going to tell you. But I'll tell you this, Batman. I need you to go to this location. All right. And he goes to that location and it says, turn around. And then he goes all the way back to the prison. And he's like, okay, I'm back again. And he goes, she's on 33rd Street. Oh, thanks. And it's like, that wasn't really that good of a story. That was just making me run around for unlocking something that ultimately didn't really matter when it came to what was going to happen anyways, which in the Riddler's case was blow up a big part of the city, flood the whole thing, and cause a giant is that the right word? Well, let's just say disaster, that others would have to clean up in the end. It's like, it's almost as if it had nothing to do with the citizens, and it had nothing to do with the politicians. It just had to do with general destruction and terrorism of society for the sake of destroying society. Who cares if people understand or not? I don't know, maybe I'm missing a detail there. Maybe it has more to do with the fact that the Riddler was actually just trying to impress the Batman, and try to have Batman be a part of it, rather, because that's the only person who could possibly have benefited from all this going on. But that was coming from an uncalculated place from the Riddler, assuming that the Batman was like him, when in reality he's nothing like him. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that really is what did it. It didn't make it a bad movie. It just made it a prolonged runaround.
So you're just saying the Riddler's motives don't seem clear enough, and his riddles, how the riddles relate to the plot, just make it seem a little too confusing, a little too stretched.
Well, you know, things happen in the real world more like maybe what's going on here. Things can be more messy, things can be more stretched out and elongated. But when we're talking about general entertainment in relation to movies, one thing that even I have to be very careful about when writing is that, yeah, could I make a story about a guy going to a mailbox and film a guy getting to the mailbox, go back into the house and establish, aha, he's just a guy. And I could also show him get on that toilet. And I can also show him do all these other things, right? Or I could summarize it all in one little car, scene and show it all summarized in a minute in a way that's entertaining and keeps the audience with you. And I don't think this movie is, I don't know if it tried to do that as much as other movies have, right? But in some way, maybe that's to its benefit. And I think to some people, they'll think that's cool. Because I don't want it necessarily to be like a Joss Whedon Justice League, for where everything is just an ADHD, runner, like, explosions, fight. We don't need to justify what's going on, and we just all know what we're doing, right? But it also shouldn't be the exact opposite, for where it's just like this story could have been told 20 different ways and led to the same point. And I think that's what it is that we could have told the story 20 different ways and have had the same ending. And that's why I feel like, I don't know.
I think to say it's a bad story is missing that it's just a different type of story, and one that has not become popular anymore in our modern era. It's a very slow story. It's a very visual story, and not visual in the sense of action, but visual in the sense of you have a shot and there's a lot of information, lighting, framing, placement of the actors. And I think recently I've revisited some 70s movies, which I think the director Matt Reeves said he took some inspiration from like a lot of the thrillers of the 70s when, you know, everything was going on with Watergate, so you had more thriller films, more like corruption films. Like one of the ones he uses is Clue, which is like a detective noir film. But all that to say, these films are very slow. They're very focused on relationships. They're very focused on building characters as opposed to plot. Like, I think the best example is I've just revisited The Godfather recently, and you watch The Godfather, and I don't think anyone would come away from that saying this story was told as succinctly and as efficiently as possible, because they're really long and bloated movies, but it's because they're focusing on characters, and they're focusing on these interactions, and they're focusing on specific moments, and the shots are slow. Everything's taking its time and taking its breath of fresh air. So we watched The Dark Knight, which is a fantastic film, but it is a faster paced film. It does focus more on that action, and I think that's more palatable to the modern audience. But then you come to the Batman, and I don't think it's fair to say the story is too slow or too confusing in that it draws everything out and doesn't make sense, and that could be the case still. Probably is in some situations, but I think it's more that the director is aiming for a very slow film that focuses on, okay, who is Batman, who is Catwoman, and then you have even Penguin. I think Penguin is a remarkably well fleshed out character for like his 10 minutes of screen time.
Yeah.
And I think that just speaks to the fact that you can't have your cake and eat it too. So you can't have a movie that's really good story and really good characters. I think something always has to be sacrificed, and I think this movie is just a very character-driven movie, hence the long run time and hence the plot that's maybe not as perfect as it could be.
I agree, actually. Yeah, no, I think maybe what is going on in my mind is I'm rating it as according to, is it as definitive of a Batman movie that our era can understand a Batman movie? And in my mind, I guess it's like, oh, maybe The Dark Knight still is more definitive. But that doesn't mean it's the most artistic. That doesn't mean it's the most character, like you said. It doesn't necessarily dissect the characters as much, and allow for subtlety. I don't think it does any of that necessarily. I mean, it does some of those things, but it may even, like you said, this seems like it's trying to make raw emotional experience by... yes, using its visuals and using time as an advantage, maybe, and by allowing it to be a little slower. I think part of me, though... Go ahead.
If I can butt in, sorry. I think The Dark Knight still uses characters really well. I think the Joker's really fleshed out in his just lack of any motive. I think the whole Two-Face arc is brilliant. Yeah. Batman, even his arc at the end is really good. I mean, Gordon's really good in that film, but I think it's just a different approach, right? That one's main focus was like this big world, these big action set pieces. Gotham feels huge, like New York City, whereas this film is so much tighter and so much smaller that I think the characters feel better, even though both I think do a good job of fleshing them out.
Well, when I say the character, what I mean is that the conflict isn't based immediately due to character, let's say, right? Because you can see how the relation between the Riddler's intentions and Batman's intentions is really the main conflict. You could say that expands outwardly in all narratives, but what I mean more so is that everything that's happening in The Batman happens as a result to the character of the Riddler and how he's trying to manifest that and push that on someone else like the Batman, and how Batman in returns does the same things with the things around him, that if either of them did not exist, these conflicts, the conflict itself would not even be present. I think with, let's say, The Dark Knight, the scope of the conflict is so grand that regardless as to whether or not Batman was even existing, most of those conflicts would still be happening in that story. And regardless if even the Joker showed up, the conflict would be happening in a different degree, just having a different result, right? And so let me put it like, at the very beginning of The Dark Knight, they made sure to start it off with everybody sliding from building to building, blowing up, and this is supposed to be a realistic take, blowing up a bank vault, crashing a school bus, taking off a mask, showing the Joker's face, putting a grenade in a guy's mouth, driving that bus off with all these other people. That's the first thing they show. So you can see how, the conflict is grand in scope before Batman or Joker has anything to do with each other. That's not the Batman's case. The Batman starts off with Batman walking around, right? You're just getting the tone of what society is in Gotham, and that you don't need a backstory. You don't need to know any of these things. It's just that the world is a slum here, and this world exists in its own fictional reality based off of, it's mimicking crime as we understand it, and corruption, and all that stuff. And I guess it's more so, let me put it like this. When I say character of Batman and Riddler, it's almost as if they're just the extreme manifestations of dichotomy, even though they look similar, right? In the sense that they both result in creating, an ego of sort. Batman is just a hyper manifestation of this seeking of justice, which is not pretty at times. And the Riddler is this hyper manifestation of selfishness and spitefulness, right? And you can see how some of those actually can cross over at times. But I think that's what the story is very purposeful about, because we won't even see the Riddler's face until we're almost done with the movie, right? And we almost never see Bruce Wayne's face in this movie, right? It's very you
sound bitter about that.
No. I'm just trying to say that you can see that this story is actually not about. It's not about trying to say, Bruce Wayne, Bruce Wayne is here and he's having this turmoil in this sense. It seems as if it's a battle of tones, right? And it's using these characters not in the sense of their immediate personal identity, but the grander representation. So Penguin, right? The reason Penguin exists is because he's a grander representation of the mob. And that's what his character's supposed to be. He's going to summarize it all in himself. Falcone is a rat-like. He's a betrayer of the mob, right? Whilst the Penguin has a little bit more dignity despite being a terrible criminal. And for that reason, this Batman is willing to work with to some extent and have some level of mercy, even though there is one little plot hole that I don't understand. But we'll get to that later. And just all that. So that's what I'm really getting at here. You could even see how it's like Batman's girl problems is completely intertwined with that immediate fictional world, Catwoman. It's not just some woman he likes as Bruce Wayne or something. No. It is his superhero that is in love with this alter ego Catwoman, right? You see what I'm saying? And that's immediately relevant to that overarching plot rather than being its own separate thing, right? That's why, so I guess they're different character studies in different ways, Dark Knight and the Batman, right? They hit different aspects of these people and they approach it in different ways.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I see what you're saying. So you're saying that we're not really focused on people, individuals. We're focused more on what they represent, like what the Batman represents, what Catwoman represents. Is that what you're saying?
I'd say it's a character study if these guys are supposed to be archetypes. And I think that, while as Dark Knight, Joker is an archetype. Joker's an archetype. Something like Harvey Dent, something like Rachel and Bruce Wayne and all that stuff, those are independent characters with their independent struggle, while as the Batman, I think, is very purposeful in trying to use these characters as archetypes and, manifestations of broader concepts rather than just those persons, right? Mm-hmm. And usually that's a good thing, frankly, because that's basically all Superman is. If you really think about it, Superman is only grand because of what he actually is supposed to symbolize, rather than the immediate character of Clark Kent.
No, and it speaks to different ways of approaching characters for sure. And the best example I could think of is any Ayn Rand book. If you read it, its characters are so far in one direction that, like you said, it's more of an archetype at that point and a study of what that kind of character is than an actual individual, because an individual is a lot more complex and so many different things rolled into one. And I guess I hadn't thought of that, but the Batman is very similar, and I can see that, how each character is so far in one direction that it's almost not realistic. But I think that's good, because I don't think it's obviously not trying to be a realistic film as much, because it's about a guy dressed like a bat, and it's very stylized. And I think that I'm a little biased. I specifically like that method of storytelling where your characters are so ideal, and not ideal in a good way necessarily, but just ideal in what they represent, because it allows for someone who's reading or viewing to relate in a way that you find the character that you most relate to, and then you realize how much better they are at what you're trying to do, and it helps you rethink, okay, how can I be better at what I'm trying to do? But then on the flip side, if done really well, you also see how blindsided they are to every other aspect of themselves that they're not. So all the other characters in the film represent what they're not, and you can see, okay, well, that's a flaw then. And I think Batman's the perfect character to do that with, because a lot of the ideas of Batman are that all his villains represent parts of him, right? So like Scarecrow is his fear, like the parts of his psyche. Scarecrow is the fearful part. I don't really know how they break them down. I think Bane's supposed to be like the physical part, and Riddler would be the intellectual part. So to put that in a movie where you have Batman, who's just this figure of justice, he's literally, or vengeance, I guess, it's literally called vengeance throughout the whole movie, and then you represent different parts of that, where Riddler's his intellectual counterpart, and Catwoman's more his like emotional counterpart, and Penguin's
that's interesting. It's like Bane is the manifestation of his hyper-masculinity that he must represent, or Catwoman is his emotional, romantic feeling, right? And I would say then maybe the Joker must be the chaos that he does exhibit to some extent, because he is wearing a bat suit, right? And it's just like, yes, they are the same, yet his motive is the opposite, right? Because it's like, I'm chaotic, but there is some restraint. I'm not only chaos. Joker is only chaos, right?
Yeah, and even this movie does that well, because I think it's brilliant. The whole, after he takes the adrenaline and punches the guy to shreds, and he's like, "Who are you?" And he's like, "I'm vengeance." It's like, that was so powerful for me, because it showed that literally this guy was literally him doing the exact same thing. He just had a different viewpoint. Yeah. And I think it humanized the villain. But speaking to what we were talking about reflections, it was a reflection of himself. And he had to come to terms with that it was a bad reflection of himself, and he needs to change.
You know what? That's something I can give, because I saw this at the end of the movie. I noticed that it is a little. I'll say this: the movie's not stupid. It's not stupid. I think it's more well thought out than any other Batman movie. Most superhero movies, period. I know this. And that's why I want more, and that's why I actually want more of this Batman and a sequel. All that, right? But I think the grander moral, because it is a dark movie and it's not trying to be childlike, but I do think it's trying to be intentionally moral. The very beginning of the movie, it starts off with him coming out of them shadows, beating up those guys. We were all hyped up when we saw the trailer, and it's like, "Who are you?" "I'm vengeance," right? And he's just completely bashing the guy's head in, right? And at first we're thinking, yes, because we're wrathful too. We're angry. We can relate. We see them beat that innocent person. And we almost want to do something to that person too, and be vengeance and avenge those who have been hurt wrongfully. And then you saw, yes, at the end, if all there was to bringing about what's good and what's fair is to have vengeance, then there can be great evil too, because even those who are selfish can seek revenge. And so Batman, when he finally gets out of that and he's being, helping everybody and giving the medical care and all that stuff, he's saying that I can't simply be vengeance. I need to be something more, right? Something beyond that. And I think really, without him saying it, I think he needs to be justice. I think that's what he's trying to imply. Some people I heard say he needs to be hope. I think it's justice. I think he needs to be justice, because justice isn't just about a revenge, right? Justice is a little bit more pure in the sense that it's not about what I feel. It's not about what I want, right? It's about what is right by the other, So it's like, there's something more to it. And so you see actually that he might withdraw such a title himself. He's like, after this movie's over, he's not simply vengeance. He is justice.
Yeah, it's just really well done. It mirrors history, what Gandhi said, what civil rights movement strove for, just fighting back through peace, and it's the only way, as opposed to bloodshed. So yeah. I think the moral aspect is definitely really well done.
Yeah, it was a good movie, man. I liked it. 78.
I mean, it's what Rotten Tomatoes.
What would you give it?
80 something.
What would you really? What'd you give it?
I mean, I think it's near perfect.
Yeah.
What
would you give it?
In the 90s, I don't know.
In the 90s, about 99, maybe 99.5.
No, it's not. It's not perfect.
99.999.
No,
What would you say? Is there anything that you would criticize?
I didn't like the voiceover at the beginning.
You didn't like that? All right.
I mean, that's so nitpicky. No, I mean, I thought. Well, at first I got scared. I thought they were gonna pull like a Blade Runner on me, and the whole movie was gonna be voiced over. And I was like, oh boy.
Oh yeah.
But no, it was a necessary evil, and I don't think that matters too much. I don't know, like, nothing really struck out to me as bad. I think, really, if I can say, I think the opening scene, like, and this is being really nitpicky, but I think the first scene in a movie really is important, and the most memorable ones, like Star Wars or Indiana Jones or whatever opening scene sticks with you, it almost makes the movie, like Baby Driver. I think it's brilliant. And I just think this movie really started off really kind of slow, kind of unexciting. Like that whole Riddler kills the mayor guy. It's like I get it. It sets up the story, but I'm not really into it. Yeah. And then the voiceover proceeded, and I was like, oh god, is this movie going to be okay? and then I liked it, I did. And I don't think every movie has to have a great opening sequence. I just think this had a lot of potential to have a great opening sequence, and it was just not too memorable. But that's okay.
Hey man, I'm not all that picky. I ain't like that, right? A lot of the things that I say I want, movies pull off, but they're still bad for different reasons, right? And things that I don't like, I see in movies, and frankly, I think, no, actually, I would have maybe done it that way too. Even though in other cases, I wouldn't have done that, right? I've seen stupid criticisms of this movie. I'm like, that's stupid. That's so irrelevant, and who cares, right? I didn't think that this was political, even though a lot of people thought it was political. I was like, I didn't notice. Why? Because there's a mayor. I mean, I don't know. Maybe there was, but I didn't think that was the point. I think that's just reality. Well,
and let me change subject a little bit. I think the best thing this movie does is the artistic side of it, and I guess that's too. I don't want to be vague, but what I'm saying is, you mentioned cinematography earlier. I think it's brilliant how they shoot this film. I think the lighting is one of my favorite things. Yeah. Like several scenes. The whole scene where he's in the hallway and it's completely pitch black and all the light is coming from the guns going off. Yeah. Like the balls on a director in a studio to have a scene that is completely black for like long moments in that scene. Yes. That's crazy.
And I agree.
Comes off so good. And then towards the end where he's lighting the flare and leading the people. And I mean, you could say it's I don't think they do this. You could argue it's too pushed and the lighting's too artistic and it kind of comes off a little like overdone, but I don't think that's the case. I think it just really makes everything so beautiful. And even the chase scene, just because of how it's lit, it might be, it's just good. It just makes everything feel good.
Let me add to what you're saying, because I'm going to take it further. Yes, it is good. It may be the best. All right? Mm-hmm. I'm looking on Google Images right now and looking through the Batman, and I remember when that one girl was telling me, she was like, you could pause the movie at any point, and it's photography, right? I agree. I think this movie is impossible. It is so good, it is impossible. Like, I don't know. I want to know who's all their directors of cinematography, because they must have storyboarded every last ounce of this movie without end. It's impossible. Sure. It's impossible how well and you can't just bring any old camera to any old joint and just say, hey, let's play around for right now. It's not possible. And yes, I think it's on purpose, because they want to create the comic book Batman-like tone, and there was and have been Batman, if he's not in, like, let's say a Justice League comic, in his own comic, it's supposed to be extremely stylized in a way that's different and dark from all other comics. Yet we never see movies filmed in that way, like Dark Knight. I don't think it goes out of its way to do that. I think it looks like a Christopher Nolan movie. It just looks like a Christopher Nolan movie. This is like, no, this is a Batman. You can't confuse it. And that would, if more directors said to themselves, not to make it like this, no, but if you're going to make more superhero movies, you should make it in according to its own style, right? So I haven't seen Shazam, right? But I've heard that has more of its own campy-like style, or Spider-Man has a little bit more of its campy-like, younger high school-like style, and that will be definitive of its character, while this movie can be exactly like this. Superman can be its own thing without trying to be like Batman, and they'll all be fun and interesting in their own ways, because just like the comics, they're different in both artistic and in artistic representation too. I think that would make people more excited to go to these different movies. I think actually that's probably Marvel's biggest problem, is that every single movie looks like it was filmed by the same people. Every last one, without end.
I mean, you could argue that that's to their benefit, because it's one shared universe, and they've clearly not had issues with money making.
Because nobody really cares, but I think that they would make even more money. But, then you're going out into the theoretical rather than the scientific. In their mind, they're like, well, we know this will work.
Yeah, and I mean, Spider-Man No Way Home will have made more money than the Batman, hands down, sadly. Which, I mean, not sadly, it was okay. But Marvel knows what they're doing, in that they make entertaining movies. And I don't think the Batman is entertaining. I think it's very beautiful, and there's a difference to that,
although there is entertainment in it,
right? But it's like, what are you being entertained by? It's like, it's kind of like the Joker movie. Like, what made that entertaining? It wasn't really a happy film.
Yeah, right.
But there was a lot of beauty in it, that made you enjoy it, and
the depth, the intensity, the uncovering, that is the entertainment, the challenge, to be challenged by the film. That's what's entertaining. Like a sport, if you will.
Yeah, and I think what's good too is we're in this like superhero bubble, and I really feel like it's changing a lot, because I think when superhero films first came out, I wouldn't say they were just movies. Like, Iron Man is really just a movie. Like, it's not exceptional. It's just a movie. Right. And now it came into this like popcorn chewing mainstream blockbuster stuff. But then now you're seeing, and I guess it's not even just mostly Warner Brothers, because you have shows like The Boys and things like that, and even maybe movies like Kick-Ass, like earlier on, where it's, okay, superheroes are cool, but how can we push the idea, and how can we allow for creativity? And I think you might have a director like Martin Scorsese say like, oh, all superhero films are trash and they should just go away. But I think maybe this is a better idea. It's like, okay, well, if people like this so much, can we not just push it into different boundaries and make interesting movies that... Because I think most people like the Batman, and it's pleased both the Marvel-loving people that like, blockbuster smash, boom boom, and it's pleased people like us who are like hypercritical about all that. And
Yes.
and I think Warner Brothers doing a great job. I hope they continue. I mean, I guess they're making The Flash and doing all this Marvel-esque stuff.
Yeah,
if they continue.
There's part of me
go
that's like with this movie and the Joker, which I don't even know if there were any other movies other than those that I can think of. And I really liked Zack Snyder's Justice League, but that's not really relevant to the newer stuff coming out. Mm-hmm. For me, what's going to be concerning is not The Flash, because that's been in development Hades for the last 20,000 years. And I actually would not say it's an indicator of what Warner Brothers is willing to do. But then, there's part of me, because I've heard so many leaks about the Flash stuff, and I'm just like, yeah, that sounds moronic. I don't think anybody's going to like that. But at the same time, Warner Brothers doesn't want to kill itself either. I think that's what's the problem? This is the perfect example. You want to talk about a business study. Warner Brothers whiplashes into what people want in a delayed fashion, and in an incorrect saturated fashion. So when people said, really it all started with Superman's Man of Steel, they made Man of Steel and they made it like a Dark Knight movie, and then people said, well, Superman doesn't really act that much like this. Where's his happiness? Where's the jolly camp, a Boy Scout? And they're like, well, I don't know, this is Zack Snyder's vision, so let's ride it through. Batman v Superman happened, and everybody hated it apparently, and so they were all like, oh no, this is terrible, but we already have a contractual deal with this guy, so let's finish this Justice League and have all these other movies coming out. Aquaman, Wonder Woman, completely different tone from the Zack Snyder movies. So that when Justice League came out and then they switched it over from Zack Snyder to Joss Whedon, they purposefully were trying to make them feel like a Marvel movie and make it a little bit more lighthearted and silly, so that when Shazam came out and the CW DC shows were coming out and finishing and getting popular, they were thinking, oh, maybe we need to be more campy like Warner Brothers. We'll do some side projects like Joker and see what happens. But in reality, it doesn't seem like anybody likes the campy either. So they're like, well, make up your mind. Do you want it crazy serious, or do you want campy? Which one is it? And I think somebody, what was the guy who made Peacemaker? I didn't see Peacemaker, but I heard it was all right. Yeah, James Gunn was like, why can't we just have them all? Why we all have to be in extremes, right? The comic book world isn't like that. Back in the 70s, you could have the most dark, scary Watchmen-like comic to the most silly Batman and Robin comic, right? Why can't we have it all, right? Just do what you want. If there's a cinematic universe over there, doesn't mean we can't make these movies too, right? Even if there's a Batman in that one, we can make a Batman over here, okay? And it makes some good points, because that is how comic books work. They didn't all follow the same continuity, or they only accepted certain continuities because different ones were running at the same time. And it's just like, if you guys really want to mimic the comics, that's actually what would happen, is that you'd end up with multiple different Batmans. You'd end up with multiple different toned movies with different universes and different tie-ins and all that stuff, right? If Marvel did that, I don't even know what would happen. I don't think Disney is so brave to do that, but yeah, man, I don't know.
Maybe one day. And it's just, I always find it interesting because people talk about these superhero movies as like, oh, Hollywood is losing its ability. And in a way, I guess it could be. It's losing its ability to make good movies and just making what makes money. And I'm like, isn't that how it's always been though? It's always been what's made money. And it just changes with the way the generation, like what it'll buy tickets for,
Yeah.
So like 60s, you had all these big musical films, and then the 70s came around and everyone got really dark and serious. So all the movies got really intense. And then 80s, everyone's like, okay, let's take a break. So then they started making, Star Wars and Indiana Jones and all these happy movies, big money-making stuff. And 90s, who knows what happened? Nothing good came out of that. And it's just like, I don't think we should look at superhero movies as ruining filmmaking, but just be hopeful when you have something like the Batman or the Dark Knight really years ago, which is so good. Like I'll take all these bad movies, bad superhero movies, if every once in a while we get a good one like that.
You think so?
Yeah, I mean, I'll take all the
disappointments.
all the disappointing Tom Holland Spider-Man movies to get Into the Spider-Verse every now and then,
Yeah.
You can't have everything be beautiful and perfect, so.
Yes, you can. That's the problem. You can if they only hired me. Because even if I didn't know, I'd find the men like you who do know and do understand, and we can all come to a consensus and not operate in extremism unless the point of the movie is to be extremely in one tone or whatever, right? Okay, that's it.
Yeah.
We're coming to the end of this. Your favorite moments
of the film.
Like, we're talking about the smallest details, little thingies, all that stuff from this movie. Instances.
Okay. I think I've kind of already said. So small or big, both?
Small, big. You could say soundtrack. You could say costume piece. You could say a scene.
I didn't really like the soundtrack, but that's okay.
I like 2 songs in the soundtrack, and I think there's only 2 songs in the soundtrack.
That's what I was gonna say. I feel like there's literally very little variation.
Dun 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 dun.
Like, it's good, but it's like, come on, not again.
Yeah. I like the ending song. I like when they were on the motorcycles. I was like, oh, that's lovely. That was nice. That's it.
I think my big one is I really like the Catwoman Batman relationship. I think it's really well done.
Yeah.
I think it makes the Dark Knight Rises one look like garbage.
Yeah, that wasn't even anything. Nothing happened.
I think it's just really it's like I guess it's a semi-romantic. It's not the main thing, but it's a romantic plot where both characters feel fleshed out, which is definitely difficult to do. So that was my big one. Small stuff, obviously, just like the certain scenes. Like I said, the hallway scene with the gunfight. I think the car scene is really good. Really, really good. And then the ending with the flare, I like all that.
Yeah.
And then maybe 2 more to sum it out. I really like the Penguin. I think really brilliant Penguin. I want a Penguin movie now. That's all.
Yeah, I heard they're thinking of making a show for HBO.
Yeah. Well, every time it's a show, you could tell that there's not as much money, and there's 5 different writers per episode.
Do you think Peacemaker? Did you see Peacemaker?
No, I heard it's good.
I think it looks like it has the same tone as Suicide Squad, but not that Suicide Squad is
hated that
all that
movie,
unique.
Yeah.
The Suicide, or wait, which one? It was the Suicide Squad. No, Suicide Squad.
I hated the first one, and I didn't think I could hate a movie more than the first one until I saw the second one. But we already talked about that one. Go.
Did we?
Click on that podcast episode. Wow. Back in the day.
Whoa. Wow.
And then my last thing is, I guess that's it. I just really like the tightness. I like Gotham in this movie. I like how everything feels tight. Like, I just watched a scene from The Dark Knight to kind of prepare, and it was the Joker, and it was just like, and it shows shots of Gotham. I was like, none of this it just doesn't feel tight. And what I mean by tight is, like, when you're in a movie and everything feels so small, that's how you know characters are being prioritized over big set pieces. And I just think this is really well done. So anyway, your turn.
I liked Catwoman's, when Batman met Catwoman for the first time in the building and she was doing the safe. I liked her spin kick thing. The first spin kick was real. I think the second one was CGI, but it looked really cool.
Interesting.
I think it looked really cool anyways. I liked when he slammed her on the table. I was like, yeah, man, don't let her do the Scarlett Johansson on you. You got this under control. You got this. I thought that was good. See, I almost said things I was like, this is a plot hole. I thought the Penguin thing felt like a plot hole. Like, he killed all those people with those, like, gas tank and all that stuff. Surely they're dead. Surely. I mean, I have to assume... Yeah, I'm going to assume that they're not dead. Because if they are dead, I don't know why Batman and Gordon just got this guy to the corner of a bridge, underneath a bridge, and said, all right, bye. It's just like, what are you talking about, bye? It's not like he has any of his thugs around here. I get that he has some level of power, but Batman, I thought you literally only exist to arrest these guys despite their power. What else do you do? What? Did he not kill those people? What's going on here?
Even the beginning of the chase scene where he's like, he's like, what happened to Batman? And Batman's in the car, and Penguin's not in the car, and he's like, Batman's just sitting there like, all right, get in the car so I can chase you. And I'm like, what? Why don't you just grab him?
Yeah, you go, vroom, 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 and they're all just standing there. I'm like, Batman, that's not going to help you. What are you gonna do? Hit him with your car? What if he doesn't get in a car? Are you gonna go forward about 1 mile per hour, then stop the car, get out, and then get shot again? I mean, what? That's not gonna save Catwoman. What's going on? I think they just wanted the car.
Of course.
I liked when he punched Gordon. That was cool. The bat suit was cool. I don't know how he survived that, but it's Batman. So you know what? It's a good suit, I guess. I'm not saying he's healthy. I liked the flare scene too. That was an awesome shot, and it made me feel good because it's kind of like what I wanted from Superman, for where it's like, yeah, Batman beats all these guys, but then he quickly realizes, wait a minute, who am I doing this for in the first place? And he's helping all these people, and he's not even caring about the fact that, yeah, I'm being seen. Yeah, I might even be being recorded on these rooftops and all that stuff, but these people need my help. This is why I do what I do. So that was cool. Him not being a simp and going with Catwoman in the end, that was a good call, even though it hurt. It hurt, but you had to do what you had to do.
That should be back.
Yeah, well, maybe not the next one. Maybe the one after, if they do a trilogy.
Maybe the 6th one.
I liked when the Riddler was like, no. I like that. That I thought it was unique and real. I'm sorry.
He pitched a little fit there.
Yeah, I was like, wow, I believe it. Yeah, maybe I'm getting so many little. It's a 3-hour movie. The Batsuit's really good. I like the collar. That's unique. When I first saw the leak of it, I thought the ears were wonky, but I think that was just a stunt double's cowl. And when I saw the real movie, it's like, wait, it's not wonky anymore. What happened? Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I remember you saying that. They might have fixed it. Who knows?
Maybe. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow, you got really small. Now I feel bad.
Well, you have any more little details?
Well, I mean, I like the motorcycle. Makes me want to buy one.
Yeah.
That was cool. Like, yeah.
Yeah.
The flying scene was interesting. Like, it was interesting. Yeah.
I liked when he was ready to beat up those cops. Because I was ready to too. I'm like, forget these guys. I'm gonna do this all on my own. And that's what Batman's all about too. And I'm like that they had that a part of the first movie and all.
That was a good scene, yeah.
Because it's just like, look, I'm doing what I'm doing because of these cops, because they're crooked, because they're not with us, right? And I'm like, that's nice. I like that. I like that.
I like Nirvana. I honestly started listening to the whole Nevermind album.
Oh yeah. This. All I have is underneath the bridge stuck in my head with the trailers constantly going afterwards in my head, but I don't know the rest of the lyrics, so I just keep saying underneath the bridge.
I mean, I think they should have gotten full in and just had like nothing but Nirvana songs the whole time, and like
should have re-released the Nirvana album but with Batman on the cover swimming with the red flare.
And the hook is a question mark?
Yeah. Perfect. Oh my goodness. You got to make that edit now. All right, here we go.